Hey, scrappy people, Tracy Reed here today, coming at you with a layout using the Citrus Twist Kit's Life in Motion collection. And this is a printable collection, so there isn't a lot of texture, of course, just like all printable collections, it's all paper. So I'm also going to be doing a deep dive into my Citrus Twist stash to build out this printable collection and add more to it. So I have a selection of alphabets and stamps and stickers here. I also have my trusty bag-o or box-o tricks over here. That's all just older Citrus Twist stuff that has come along, and I didn't have anything to do with it, so it just went into a box. So I want to clear out some of my stash and also make a page about what I'm gonna call the title of the layout is My Tiny Harvest. I'm not a big gardener. I do have a ton of plants, but they're mostly indoor plants. But I do every year have a tomato plant and a basil plant. And this year, the tomato plant it just stayed tiny. It just was a tiny plant. So this is gonna be my tiny harvest, and that is what I'm planning here. I also have some of these older frames from the Citrus Twist store. So I'm thinking, since these photos are square and these frames are square, I'm gonna use up some of these square frames and get them out of my stash and onto a page. So let's see where this heads. Let's go. So this layout ended up pretty freeform for me, and I really like it. It's very different than what I normally do. Obviously, I don't normally dig into my stash. That's why I kind of want to start a series of digging into my stash, because the things I decide to keep for a reason, and then I never pull them out again. So I kind of want to start a series. Are you interested in maybe a series of like combining new product with old product? I know I do like the TRD Mix It Up Mondays where we combine old collections and new collections, but this is kind of a different thing, like stash diving, not necessarily combining collections. You can see that big old pile of product that I have on the right there that are not part of like any specific collection. I just pulled it in because I felt like maybe it would work. So are you interested in something like that? Let me know in the comments if you would be interested in sort of a stash diving series. So what I'm doing here is sort of stash diving. I have all of these paper scraps from the collection, the printables that I use. Like I have all these weird offcuts because the first layout that I did was the one with the sun cut file, and that is in this playlist if you want to check it out. The cut file was free, so that is on my blog as well. But I have all of these weird offcuts because of that, so I'm trying to use up the funky cut papers so that they don't like just get trashed. And I'm also wanting to add in a little bit of color because both of these papers, even though the one on the right has a lot of color in it, they both read very white. So I'm trying to add in some color to this page, and even with all of this stuff that I end up adding, it's still, I get in and almost done with this page, and it still just does not look colorful enough. So I'm going to add even more down the line. So I have these two strips, and I can't waste anything, so I decided to put them on the outside edges of the papers, so rather than the inside edges. So it's just a little pop of color on that, especially on that gray and white paper, but just for fun. Both papers are really busy, and normally I wouldn't pair two busy papers together, but I don't know, it worked for me. Maybe because one was basically black and white and one was color, and I end up covering up a lot of it anyway, so it's not a big deal. But I also pulled in this gardening card. So I don't garden. Like I said, I don't even have a garden. We live in a condo, so we have like a patio area where I have a bit of a container garden with some basil and some tomatoes, and then I have lots and lots of indoor plants. But since I don't garden, and this stuff was really garden heavy, I decided to just go all in and use all the gardening stuff on one page, especially up there on the top. You can see or actually right there on the right, you can see the plant markers, so I decided to incorporate those as well. So I'm pulling in these slide frames from my Citrus Twist stash and sort of building up this square vibe for this page. I really like the way that those overlapped. I'm going to take this and actually put it underneath the other slide. It fits just about perfectly, so it's a good little frame for this journaling block from the printables. course, it takes me a second to get it centered, but we'll get there. And then I'm going to put it down, and yeah, much better. So I also have all of these strips that I pulled out, these like word strips. Doing my best I thought was hilariously appropriate for this page. And then I also want to use grow together. I decided I don't really want to use that circular plant marker, so I'm going to use the two rectangular ones instead because they fit the vibe of the page a little bit better. We got lots of straight edges, although I do end up adding in a couple of circular pieces as well, but I just didn't feel like the plant marker worked with the way that this page was coming together. So what I'm trying to do here is overlap a lot, right? Like I said, I was doing some free form stuff, and the way that I feel like what I feel is free form for me is not really like, I like to define my layouts with like paper strips a lot, or photo blocks, just like big clusters in the middle of the page. And so instead of doing that, I started with my photos, obviously, and some journaling cards, but now I'm just building on top of it in sort of a more free-form, natural way, rather than trying to make sure everything is clustered together perfectly. And it was definitely a little bit of a stretch for me, although this page did not take a long time. So I'm going to build my title, and it's going to be a smaller title than normal. I thought that that would be appropriate since the title is My Tiny Harvest. I thought it would be good to keep the title a bit tiny as well. So I decided to use this alpha stamp from Citrus Twist rather than the other one I had pulled out, because I thought that it was a better contrast and it would stand out on this paper a little bit better than that thinner one would. Now I'm going to do some stamping on this page. I decide to go ahead and stamp this phrase repeatedly. It says, all things grow with love. I'm going to do it in a few different places on both sides of the page, sort of as part of the design rather than the sentiment itself. And then I'm going to start pulling in some embellishments from the stash stuff that I have pulled to the side. So I saw these milk caps. Yeah, I think that's what they're called. Milk caps from an older collection from last year, obviously. That one says raised wild, raised free, and this one says fresh produce, locally grown. So I thought that those were both appropriate, and then I'm going to add one more because it's also, besides the fact that it's a circle, it's also green. So I added 3 spots of that dark green because I'm really trying to pull in some color, like I said, because the background pages are so very white based. So now I'm going to pull in this word strip. I thought that there would be more word strips on this page than that would go with this collection, or this page, than did, but that was like the only one I could get out of there. These are from the Valentine's Day release, or the February release this year. I never used them, but the orange and green hearts match perfectly. Some old arrows from my stash. So I'm just going through everything that I pulled aside and adding things. Like these green leaves just came, I don't even remember, but they were one of my first Citrus Twist things, and I never really could figure out a place to use them, but I thought that they would be perfect on here and add some more of that dark green. I don't add them quite yet. I did try a few times to incorporate them, but I just could not make them work, but eventually I get them. And so this is where I'm deciding that I need some more color. So I'm going to add these green ones, or these green leaves in. Of course, I'm really struggling with where to put this second leaf because it just does not go anywhere on this page that makes sense. So they're actually going to go on both leaves are going to go on the left-hand side rather than trying to incorporate it on the right-hand side. And eventually that works. So I'm not going to put that one there. It's going to go a little bit lower down. I'm going to end up covering up that first stamp that I did, which I think is funny because it was like the first one that I put down, so it was like the most intentional one, and then it gets covered up. But that green leaf looks perfect right there, so whatever. And now I'm going to use some of these orange paper scraps because I'm really feeling like there needs to be some grounding on this layout, and I feel like the orange paper is going to ground this layout really well. So I'm going to put a triangle behind this cluster here, and then I'm also going to put one on the left hand side, and it's going to help frame in this layout, and it's going to just make this whole thing come together and look a lot better than the sort of floating masterpiece that I had going on before. So I'm gonna do one more. I'm gonna make sure I add in my holes every single time. I'm gonna cut this diagonally and make another triangle just like the one on the other side. Of course, I have to trim off my little white strips that are always left over. And then I'm gonna put it down on the bottom down here, and it's gonna frame in that all things grow with love, just like on the other side. Perfect. You can see that gives a nice little mirrored symmetry effect and frames in the whole page, grounds everything, and makes it just look more finished than before. Even though like it's not like it frames in both corners, but because they're going in opposite directions and they kind of mirror each other, it works. So the last thing that I'm going to do here is add in some of this sticky lace from my Stitcher's Twist stash. I'm going to notch both with fishtails, and I'm just going to add it for a little bit of texture on both sides of the page. This was basically just to use up some more stuff in my stash. You can see I used a ton of my stash on this page. It made me so happy to get it out of the box and onto the page, where it doesn't feel like it's just sitting there being useless. Okay, no, the actual last thing I do is I find these green leaves that match the green cans on the paper and on the card. So I'm going to layer those above these dark green leaves, but also on the other side as well. And I think that really finishes off the page and brings the whole thing together, even though it's just such a tiny touch. Sometimes the tiny little touches are the ones that really make a difference. So if you enjoyed this video, I'd love it if you give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, go ahead and subscribe. I'd love to have you. If you don't already, you can follow me over on Instagram. I'm at Tracy M. Reed. I'd love to see you over there as well. Let me know in the description box below if you're interested in more stash-based layouts like this one, and let me know what you think of this more free-form style scrapbooking. All right, thank you.